The drunk Apache woman tore his shirt, but what she saw took his breath away. The evening began like many others in that small border town, slow and quiet, as if time itself had learned to move gently there. The sun had already disappeared behind low hills, leaving the sky painted in soft shades of orange and gray. Streetlights flickered on one by one, casting long shadows on cracked sidewalks. The air carried the smell of dust, old wood, and distant rain that never quite arrived. The man walked toward a modest bar near the edge of town. It was not a place people went for excitement. It was a place they went to forget. He had finished a long day of physical work, his shoulders heavy, his hands rough and tired. He was staying in town for a few weeks because of a temporary job, nothing permanent, nothing that tied him to the place. That was how he liked it. Moving kept his thoughts quiet. Inside the bar, the lights were dim, the kind that softened faces and blurred sharp edges. A few locals sat at the counter, speaking in low voices. An old song played on the radio, its sound cracked and distant. The man chose a small table near the wall, away from everyone else. He ordered a simple drink, one he could sip slowly, and sat with his back against the wall, watching without being noticed. He had learned how to do that long ago, observe without inviting attention. It was safer that way. That was when he noticed her. She stood out not because she was loud at first, but because of the way people looked past her. An Apache woman sat alone at the far end of the bar. Her dark hair fell loosely around her face, untidy, as if she had stopped caring how it looked. Her clothes were worn, not dirty, but clearly old. There was a glass in front of her that she kept lifting and lowering without focus. Her laughter came suddenly and then vanished just as quickly, leaving behind an empty look in her eyes. Some people frowned when she laughed. Others turned away. No one asked if she was okay. The man watched her without judgment. He had seen that look before, in mirrors and reflections of windows late at night. It was the look of someone trying to drown thoughts that refused to stay quiet. As time passed, her movements became less steady. She spoke to the bartender, her words unclear but emotional. The bartender listened with practiced patience but kept his distance. This was not his first time seeing her. That much was clear. She had been here before, many times. The man told himself it was none of his business. He took a sip of his drink and looked down at the table, tracing the scratches in the wood with his eyes. He reminded himself why he stayed distant from people. Getting involved always led to questions, and questions led to memories. Memories were dangerous, but something about her presence made it hard to look away. She stood up suddenly, the stool scraping loudly against the floor. For a moment it seemed like she might fall, but she steadied herself with the counter. A few people glanced over, uncomfortable. No one offered help. She laughed again, louder this time, and raised her glass as if to toast the room, even though no one joined her. The man felt a tightness in his chest. Not pity, something heavier. When she finally moved toward the door, her steps uneven, the bartender watched carefully but did not stop her. Outside, the night air was cool, sharp against warm skin. The man hesitated only a moment before finishing his drink and standing up. He told himself he was just leaving, nothing more. Outside, the street was nearly empty. The woman stood near the entrance, one hand against the wall, breathing deeply. Her shoulders shook slightly, though it was hard to tell if she was laughing or crying. The man stepped past her at first, keeping his eyes forward. But then he heard her speak. Her voice was rough but filled with feeling. She said something about the night being unfair, about people who leave and never come back. Her words were not aimed at him, yet they reached him all the same. He stopped. Slowly, he turned around and spoke gently, asking if she was okay. The question sounded simple, almost foolish, even to him. She looked up sharply, her eyes focusing on him with sudden intensity. For a moment there was anger in her gaze, raw and unfiltered. "What do you care?" she asked, her voice shaking. He didn't answer right away. He wasn't sure how to explain that sometimes people care even when they don't want to. He said only that it was late and cold, and she might want to sit down. She laughed again, but this time there was no humor in it. She stepped closer, her balance unsteady, her emotions spilling over. She spoke about loss, about being forgotten, about how people judged without knowing anything. Her words came fast and tangled like thoughts she had held inside for too long. The man listened. He didn't interrupt. He had learned that listening was sometimes the only thing you could offer. Suddenly, her hand reached out and grabbed the front of his shirt. It wasn't done with harm, more with desperation, as if she needed something solid to hold onto. The fabric pulled tight between them. The man froze, not out of fear but surprise. The streetlight above them flickered, casting light and shadow across their faces. "Don't pretend you understand," she said, her voice breaking. "You don't know what it's like." The sound of fabric tearing filled the air softly but clearly. Both of them went still. She looked down at his shirt, torn near the chest, and then her eyes followed the opening to what lay beneath. Her expression changed instantly. The anger drained from her face, replaced by shock so sudden it looked almost painful. The man felt his breath catch. He knew what she was seeing. He had spent years making sure no one did. The night seemed to grow quiet around them, as if the world itself had paused, waiting for what would come next. For a long moment, neither of them moved. The torn fabric hung loosely from the man's chest, swaying slightly in the cool night air. The woman's hand was still clenched in his shirt, but her grip had softened. Her eyes were fixed on what the tear had revealed, and the wild anger she carried only seconds before faded into something quiet and shaken. She stepped back slowly, as if waking from a dream. Her hand fell to her side. "That mark," she said in a low voice, barely louder than the wind. "That isn't just a scar." The man pulled the torn edges of his shirt together, his fingers stiff. He had learned long ago to hide what lay beneath layers of cloth and silence. He hadn't planned on anyone seeing it, especially not like this. His heart beat hard in his chest, each thud reminding him of a past he tried not to touch. "It's nothing," he said quietly, though they both knew that was not true. She shook her head slowly. The unsteady movements from earlier were gone, replaced by sharp focus. The fog in her eyes had lifted. "No," she replied. "I've seen signs like that before. My grandmother used to talk about them." She looked at him again, really looked at him this time, as if trying to read a story written across his skin. The man felt exposed in a way that had nothing to do with the torn shirt. He glanced around the empty street. A car passed at the far end, its headlights sweeping over them for just a second before disappearing again. No one else was watching. Still, he felt the familiar urge to leave, to walk away before questions turned into truths. He took a step back, putting space between them. "You should get home," he said gently. "It's late." She didn't argue. Instead, she sat down heavily on the curb as if her legs had suddenly given up. She pressed her palms against her face and breathed out slowly. When she spoke again, her voice was softer, stripped of its edge. "I didn't mean to do that," she said, nodding toward his shirt. "I'm sorry." "It's okay," he replied, though his chest felt tight. He stood there awkwardly, unsure whether to stay or go. Leaving felt cruel now. Staying felt dangerous. She looked up at him. "You don't look like someone who gets into trouble," she said. "So why do you carry something like that?" The question was calm, almost curious, not accusing. That made it harder. He hesitated, then sat down on the curb a short distance away. He didn't face her directly, instead staring out at the quiet street. "Some things follow you," he said after a moment. "No matter how far you go." She nodded, as if she understood completely. "That's true," she said. "I've walked away from this place more times than I can count. I always come back." They sat in silence for a while. The sounds of the night surrounded them, the hum of distant traffic, the soft buzz of the streetlight, the faint music drifting from inside the bar. The woman pulled her jacket tighter around herself. The man noticed and without thinking too much about it offered her his coat. She hesitated, then accepted it with a small nod. "Thank you," she said. "You're welcome." After a few moments she spoke again. "My name is Lena." He paused. Sharing names felt like crossing a line. But something about this moment felt already beyond lines. "I'm Daniel," he said. She repeated his name quietly as if testing how it sounded. Then she asked, "That mark on you, it's connected to this land, isn't it?" Daniel closed his eyes briefly. There it was. The truth knocking, asking to be let in. He opened his eyes and looked at her. "Yes," he said, "it is." Lena swallowed. "Then you know," she said. "You know what was lost here." Daniel nodded slowly. Images flickered through his mind, dust, noise, confusion, a moment that split his life into before and after. "I know," he said. Her hands trembled slightly as she clasped them together. "I lost someone," she said, "a long time ago." That's when everything started to fall apart. She gave a weak laugh. "People think I drink because I don't care, but it's because I care too much." Daniel listened, his chest aching with recognition. "I'm sorry," he said. "So am I," she replied, "for a lot of things." She looked at him again, her eyes searching his face. "Were you there?" she asked carefully. "Back then?" The question hung between them, heavy and fragile. Daniel took a deep breath. "Yes," he said, "I was." Lena didn't react the way he expected. She didn't shout. She didn't cry. She simply nodded once, as if a puzzle piece had finally fallen into place. "I thought so," she said. "There was something familiar about you, even before what happened." Daniel felt his throat tighten. "I didn't know," he said quickly. "I didn't know who would be affected. If I had—" She raised her hand gently, stopping him. "I'm not asking for explanations," she said. "I've lived with questions long enough. I just wanted to know if my feeling was right." They sat there together, two strangers bound by a shared wound neither had chosen. The anger Lena carried earlier seemed to have drained away completely, leaving behind exhaustion and something close to peace. After a while, she stood up slowly, steadier now. "I should go," she said. "My place isn't far." Daniel stood as well. He handed her back his coat, then hesitated. "Are you okay to walk alone?" he asked. She smiled faintly. "I've walked alone my whole life," she said, "but thank you for asking." They stood facing each other under the flickering streetlight. There was so much left unsaid, yet the silence no longer felt heavy. It felt honest. As Lena turned to leave, she stopped and looked back at him. "Whatever you're running from," she said, "it found you tonight. Maybe that means it's time to stop running." Daniel watched her walk away until she disappeared into the darkness. He stood there for a long time after that, the cool night air brushing against the tear in his shirt, against the past he could no longer fully hide. Daniel did not sleep much that night. After Lena disappeared down the quiet street, he returned to the small room he had rented near the worksite. The torn shirt lay folded on the chair, like a reminder he could not push aside. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw her face. At the moment she recognized the mark on his chest. Not fear, not anger, something deeper, something that reached into places he had locked away for years. Morning came slowly. Pale sunlight crept through the thin curtains, touching the walls and floor. Daniel sat on the edge of the bed, his elbows resting on his knees, his hands clasped tightly. He told himself he should leave town early, finish his job, and move on like he always did. That had been his pattern for a long time. Arrive, work, leave before roots could form. But Lena's words stayed with him. Maybe it's time to stop running. He went through his day on autopilot. The work crew noticed he was quieter than usual, but no one asked questions. They never did. By late afternoon, his muscles ached, but the pain felt distant, like it belonged to someone else. His thoughts were somewhere else entirely. When his shift ended, Daniel surprised himself by walking back toward the bar instead of heading home. He told himself he just wanted a meal, nothing more. Still, his steps slowed as he neared the place. Part of him hoped to see Lena again. Another part feared it. She wasn't inside. The bar looked the same as the night before. Same dim lights, same low voices. Daniel sat at a table, ordered food, and waited longer than necessary. When it became clear she wouldn't appear, he paid and left. Outside, the sky was darkening again. The air felt heavy, as if rain might fall. Daniel stood on the sidewalk, unsure where to go. Then he remembered what Lena had said. Her place isn't far. He didn't know her address, but he knew the direction she had walked. The older part of town lay beyond the bar, closer to the edge of the reservation. He hesitated only a moment before heading that way. The houses there were small and worn but cared for. Porch lights glowed softly. Wind chimes clinked in the breeze. Daniel walked slowly, feeling like an outsider. He was just about to turn back when he saw her. Lena sat on the steps of a modest house, her arms wrapped around her knees. She looked sober now, tired but clear. When she noticed him, her eyes widened slightly in surprise. "You came back," she said. "So did you," he replied gently. She gave a small smile. "I always do." He didn't ask if he could sit. He just lowered himself onto the step beside her, leaving a respectful distance. For a while, neither spoke. The quiet felt different here. Less tense, more real. After a moment, Lena spoke. "I wondered if I imagined you," she said. "Like maybe last night was just my mind playing tricks on me." Daniel shook his head. "It was real," she nodded, staring out at the dirt road in front of the house. "Good," she said, "because I've been thinking about it all day." "So have I," he admitted. She turned to look at him. "Then you know why I recognized it," she said softly. He took a slow breath. "I do." She didn't rush him, she waited. That patience made it harder, not easier. Daniel looked down at his hands. "Years ago," he began, "I was part of a project near here. There was an accident, equipment failed, people were hurt." His voice tightened. "I survived, others didn't." Lena closed her eyes briefly. "My brother was one of them," she said. The words landed quietly but with great weight. Daniel felt something inside him break open. "I didn't know his name," he said. "I didn't know his family, I only knew the faces. I've carried them with me ever since." Lena's jaw tightened, but she didn't turn away. "He was kind," she said. "He wanted to leave town someday. He said there was more to the world than pain." She let out a slow breath. "After he was gone, I stopped believing that." "I'm sorry," Daniel said again, the words feeling too small, too worn. "I can't change what happened." "No," she said. "You can't," she looked at him steadily. "But you came back, that matters." He swallowed hard. "I didn't plan to." "Maybe plans don't matter as much as choices," she replied. They sat together as the sky darkened fully. A few stars appeared, faint but steady. Lena stood up and motioned toward the door. "I have coffee," she said. "If you want." Daniel hesitated, then followed her inside. The house was simple but warm. Photographs lined one wall, family gatherings, smiling faces. Daniel noticed one photo in particular, a young man standing beside Lena, both of them laughing. He knew without being told. "That's him," Lena said quietly. "He looks happy," Daniel replied. "He was," she said, "until the world asked too much of him." They sat at the small kitchen table, cups of coffee between them. The warmth seeped into Daniel's hands, grounding him. Lena watched him closely. "You've been punishing yourself," she said. It wasn't a question. "Yes," he answered. "For how long?" He thought about it. "Since that day," she nodded. "I did the same thing, just differently." Daniel looked up. "What do you mean?" "I blamed myself for surviving," she said. "For not being there, for not stopping it." She met his eyes. "We've both been carrying something that doesn't belong to us alone." The truth of that settled slowly between them. Lena stood and walked to a small shelf. She took down an old item, worn smooth with age. "This was my brother S," she said. "He believed stories mattered. That telling them kept people alive." She placed it gently on the table between them. "You're part of the story now," she said, "whether you like it or not." Daniel felt a strange sense of release, like a door opening where there had only been walls before. He didn't know what tomorrow would bring. He only knew that for the first time in years, he wasn't alone with his past. Outside, the night deepened, but inside the small house, something fragile and honest began to take shape. Daniel and Lena spent the evening talking quietly in the small kitchen, the soft light from the single lamp above casting gentle shadows on the walls. Neither wanted to leave the conversation, though both knew the hours were slipping by. Outside, the night was deep and still, only the occasional hum of a car in the distance breaking the silence. Inside, the space between them began to feel less like a boundary and more like a bridge. Daniel stirred his coffee slowly, his hands wrapped around the warm cup. He felt the weight of his past pressing on him, yet sharing it here, in this quiet room, made it a little lighter. "It's strange," he said, "how some things stay hidden for years and then one night they're just exposed." He gestured vaguely to the scar on his chest, the one that had startled Lena the night before. "I've been carrying all of it alone. I thought no one could understand." Lena looked at him with a soft intensity. Her eyes, once clouded by anger and pain, now held clarity. "I understand more than you think," she said. "I've carried my own pain the same way. Alone, hidden, waiting for someone to notice. Sometimes people never notice, and sometimes they notice at the worst possible moment." Daniel nodded slowly. "Yes, that. It's always at the worst moment. And yet it matters that someone noticed that you noticed." He met her gaze, and for the first time there was no tension, no fear, just recognition. Someone had finally seen what he had been trying to hide for so long. Lena shifted in her chair. "I lost someone," she said softly, almost to herself. "My brother, he was everything to me, and then he was gone. I blamed myself for not doing enough, for not being there. I thought I could walk away, that the world would forget him if I did, but it doesn't work that way. You carry the memories with you whether you want to or not." Daniel listened, feeling a painful echo of his own guilt. "I know that feeling," he said quietly. "I survived something that took others from me. And every day I've been asking myself why it wasn't me who went, why I'm the one left behind. I thought I could run from it, move from place to place, erase it. But it doesn't work. It follows you." Lena's eyes softened and she reached out, placing a hand lightly on the table near his. "It follows you," she agreed. "But maybe following isn't always bad. Maybe it's telling us we still have a choice. We can let it define us, or we can let it teach us something." Daniel considered her words, feeling their weight settle inside him. "I want to stop running," he admitted. "I want to face it even if it hurts, even if I can't change the past. I don't know how to start." Lena gave a small, understanding smile. "Then start here," she said. "Start by telling it, sharing it. Let someone else hear your story. That's the first step. That's how healing begins." They spent hours that night sharing their stories. Daniel spoke of the accident, of the faces of those he had seen lost, of the heavy silence that followed him everywhere he went. Lena spoke of her brother, of the loneliness and anger that had led her down a path she wished she could undo. They listened to each other without interruption, without judgment, just the steady rhythm of two people connecting through shared pain. At one point, Daniel paused, looking down at his hands. "I've never told anyone this," he said. "Not like this, not the whole truth. I didn't think anyone could understand." "You're telling it now," Lena reminded him gently, "and I understand more than you realize." A silence fell between them, filled with the quiet hum of the house, the soft rustle of wind outside. Daniel felt a strange sense of peace, one he hadn't known in years. The weight of his past still existed, but it no longer felt like a prison. It was something he could hold, acknowledge, and begin to live with, rather than run from. Lena leaned back slightly in her chair, her eyes thoughtful. "You know," she said softly, "sometimes the people who survive the hardest things are the ones who can help others survive too. You've carried so much, Daniel, but maybe now you can carry it in a different way. Not as a burden, but as something that gives meaning to your life." Daniel looked at her, really looked at her, and saw in her eyes the same recognition he had seen in her first glance the night before. He realized that she too had been carrying a heavy weight, and that weight had brought them together in this moment. "I hope so," he said quietly. "I want to believe that." The night continued with quiet conversation, shared memories, and occasional laughter that felt fragile but real. Outside, the stars shone faintly, their distant light casting a calm over the world. Inside, Daniel and Lena found a small sanctuary from the chaos of their pasts, a place where they could face their pain together, even if just for a few hours. As the hours passed, the conversation shifted from past tragedies to small, lighter memories, childhood stories, fleeting moments of joy, and things that had made them smile before the world demanded too much. These glimpses of normalcy felt almost surreal, but Daniel welcomed them. They reminded him that life was more than loss and guilt, that beauty still existed even after tragedy. By the time the first hint of dawn touched the horizon, the two of them were quiet, sitting together with a shared understanding. Daniel felt a calm he had not known in years. The past was still there, but it no longer ruled him. He realized that sometimes, facing someone else's understanding gaze was enough to begin forgiving yourself. Lena finally stood, stretching slightly, and offered him a small smile. "You should rest," she said. "It's been a long night for both of us." Daniel nodded, feeling the truth in her words. "I will," he said, "and thank you for listening, for understanding." She reached out, giving his hand a brief squeeze. "We all need someone sometimes," she said, "even if it's just for one night." He watched her leave, her figure disappearing into the first light of morning. For the first time in a long while, Daniel felt that maybe the past didn't have to define him. Maybe he could carry it differently, with understanding, connection, and even forgiveness. Sitting in the quiet kitchen, alone but not lonely, Daniel realized that night had changed him. He had faced truths he had hidden for years, shared them with someone who understood, and found a glimmer of hope. The path ahead would not be easy, but he now believed that it was possible to walk it with his head held high, and with the weight of the past transformed into something that could guide him forward rather than hold him back. And somewhere in the distance, Lena's words echoed in his mind. "Maybe now you can carry it in a different way." Daniel held onto that thought as he finally allowed himself to rest, knowing that this night was not just an end, but a beginning. Daniel woke slowly to the soft light of morning, filtering through the thin curtains of his small, rented room. The room was quiet, the kind of quiet that feels full of thought rather than emptiness. He lay still for a few moments, his mind replaying the events of the previous night, the conversation, the shared stories, the quiet understanding he and Lena had found in one another. It was strange how a single night could feel like a lifetime in lessons, emotions, and revelations. He remembered Lena's words as he sat up, stretching his stiff muscles. "Maybe now you can carry it in a different way." The words seemed to settle in his chest, mingling with the scar and the memories that had haunted him for so long. For the first time, he felt that weight could be something more than just guilt and regret. It could be a guide, a reason to live with intention rather than fear. After a quick shower, Daniel dressed carefully, making sure the torn shirt from the night before was replaced with a clean one. The scar, still faintly visible beneath his chest, no longer felt like a secret he needed to hide. Instead, it felt like a part of him that had survived, a mark of endurance rather than shame. He stepped outside, the cool morning air brushing against his skin. The street was empty, except for a few early risers starting their day. Birds called from the rooftops, their soft songs a contrast to the heavy thoughts in his mind. Daniel walked toward the small part of town where Lena's house had been. He didn't know if he would see her again, but he felt compelled to go, not out of obligation, but from a need to say something he hadn't been able to voice the night before. As he approached the modest house, he saw Lena tending to her small garden, the early light highlighting the delicate lines of her face. She looked up and smiled faintly when she noticed him. "Good morning," she said, her voice calm and welcoming. "Morning," he replied. For a moment they stood in silence, the garden between them a small barrier yet also a symbol of growth and patience. Daniel finally spoke. "I wanted to thank you," he said, "for last night, for listening, for understanding. I've never had anyone do that before." Lena nodded slowly. "You're welcome," she said, "and thank you for trusting me. That's not easy either." She set down the small watering can she had been using and stepped closer, but still maintained a respectful distance. It's rare to find someone who shares the weight of their past without judgment. Daniel looked at her, feeling a strange mix of relief and admiration. It's even rarer to find someone who understands that weight without expecting you to fix it immediately, he said. Most people want to solve, to give advice, or to make it disappear. But last night, it felt like you just let me carry it, even for a little while, without pressure. Lena smiled faintly, the expression tinged with a sadness that mirrored his own. "That's because I know," she said simply. "I've carried my own burdens. Sometimes people just need to be seen and heard, not fixed." They talked for a long while, sharing small details of their lives that had nothing to do with guilt or loss, memories from childhood, small joys and fleeting moments of laughter that reminded them both that life was more than pain. Daniel felt a growing sense of connection, a bond that went beyond words. It was quiet, steady, and real, a comfort he hadn't realized he had been missing. As the morning wore on, Lena invited Daniel inside for a cup of coffee. The small kitchen smelled faintly of herbs and old wood. They sat at the table, cups in hand, the conversation drifting naturally. Lena shared stories of her brother, not just his death but his life. The way he laughed, the small acts of kindness he had shown to those around him, the dreams he had carried. Daniel listened, feeling a deep respect and empathy for the boy she had lost and the woman she had become. "I never thought I would meet anyone who understands," Daniel said quietly. "Even after all these years, I thought no one could ever understand the choices, the guilt, the survival." "You're not alone," Lena replied softly. "And maybe survival isn't just about staying alive. Maybe it's about carrying the memory of those who didn't survive in a way that honors them, not punishes yourself." Daniel considered her words. For so long, he had carried the accident, the loss, and the fear like a chain around his neck. He realized now that chain could be something different, a reminder of responsibility, yes, but also a symbol of resilience. The scar on his chest was not just a mark of pain, it was proof that he had endured and that he could endure still. They spent the afternoon walking through the quiet streets near the reservation. Lena showed him small places that had been meaningful to her, the old oak tree where she and her brother had played, a small creek where she used to throw stones and dream of distant places. Daniel found himself listening more than talking, absorbing not only her words but the subtle rhythm of her world. For the first time in years, he felt grounded, part of something larger than himself. As the sun began to dip toward the horizon, casting long shadows across the ground, they returned to Lena's house. She paused at her doorstep, turning to face him. "I don't know what the future holds," she said, her voice quiet but steady. "But I do know that we can choose how to carry our past. We can let it weigh us down, or we can use it to move forward." Daniel nodded. "I think I understand," he said. "For the first time, I feel like I can choose. I don't have to run anymore. I don't have to hide." A gentle silence followed. Neither of them needed to speak. The words had been said, the understanding shared. There was a sense of closure and beginning at the same time. They had faced their pasts together, even briefly, and come out the other side not unscathed but stronger. Before he left town that evening, Daniel and Lena stood outside her house once more. The sky was painted in shades of pink and orange, a promise of tomorrow. Daniel held out his hand, and Lena shook it firmly, a silent acknowledgement of what they had shared. "Take care of yourself," she said. "Carry it wisely." "I will," he promised, "and thank you for everything." He turned to walk away, each step feeling lighter than before. The streets he had once wandered aimlessly now seemed full of possibility. He realized that life would still bring challenges, and memories of loss would still appear. But now, he understood that those memories could guide him, give him strength, and even connect him to others in ways he had never imagined. As Daniel disappeared down the quiet street, Lena watched from her doorstep, feeling a small but undeniable hope. She knew that life would not be easy, that nights of pain and grief would still come. But she also knew that she and Daniel had each found a spark of understanding that night, a spark that could change how they carried their burdens and faced the world. And so, in the stillness of the early evening, both of them moved forward. Not by forgetting the past, but by learning to carry it differently, honoring it, surviving it, and allowing it to shape them into people who could live fully, with courage and quiet strength. The scar, the memories, the guilt, all of it remained. But Daniel now felt the possibility of redemption, of connection, of life lived not in shadows, but in light, however small and fleeting that light might be. Lena, too, felt the weight of her grief shift, replaced by hope that she could finally live with the memory of her brother in a way that gave her peace. That night, as the stars appeared over the small town and the wind whispered through the streets, a quiet sense of healing settled over both of them. They had met by chance, carried pain together, and discovered that even in loss and guilt, there is the possibility of understanding, forgiveness, and a new beginning. And in that quiet moment, Daniel and Lena both knew something essential. Sometimes, life gives you a second chance, not to erase the past, but to face it, accept it, and move forward with courage and hope.